Sophia Ramirez was just a cleaning lady, invisible, replaceable, silent. But one evening, hidden behind a luxury closet in a millionaire's bedroom, she found something so dangerous that staying quiet would mean watching a man die slowly, and speaking up could cost her everything. Sophia Ramirez had mastered the art of being invisible. In houses like the Carter estate, invisibility was survival. You learned where to step, how to breathe quietly, how to exist without leaving a trace. The staff corridors were narrow and dim compared to the grand halls guests walked through, but Sophia preferred them that way. Shadows were safer than light. Every morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., she pushed her cleaning cart across the cold marble floors of Greenwood Hill's most talked-about mansion. The wheels squeaked softly, echoing against walls decorated with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. 15 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a private library, an indoor pool no one ever used, and at the heart of it all, the master suite. That was where Nathan Carter lived most of his life. Nathan Carter was 31 years old and already everything the world admired: brilliant, wealthy, powerful. He had built a tech empire before most people figured out what they wanted to do with their lives. His name appeared in business magazines, his face had once been familiar on conference stages, but now he was rarely seen. From her first day at the estate, Sophia noticed the silence around him. Staff spoke his name carefully, like it might break something fragile. "He's not well," the house manager had told her. "You'll clean the master suite last. Keep noise to a minimum." Not well was an understatement. Nathan coughed like his lungs were tired of working. The sound carried through the thick wooden doors, deep and violent, as if his body were trying to expel something it couldn't name. Sophia knocked gently, as she always did. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said, keeping her voice low. There was a pause. Then, "Come in, please, but be quick." His voice sounded hoarse, scraped raw by nights without rest. She entered the master suite and felt it immediately. The air pressed against her skin. The room was enormous, king-size bed, velvet curtains, designer furniture, but it felt wrong, heavy, stagnant. The windows were always shut, the curtains always drawn. No sunlight, no movement. Nathan lay propped against pillows, his skin pale against the dark sheets. His eyes were sunken, shadows carved beneath them like he hadn't slept properly in years. Sophia began dusting the nightstand, careful not to disturb him. "You've been sick for a long time," she said quietly, more observation than question. He gave a weak smile. "Feels like forever. You don't look any better than when I started." Nathan exhaled slowly. 4 doctors, maybe 5. They ran every test imaginable: lungs, heart, blood, allergies, nothing. Another cough shook him, forcing him to turn away. "They say it's stress, anxiety, burnout. Apparently, success has side effects." Sophia frowned. She had grown up in a small apartment in downtown Los Angeles, raised by a grandmother who trusted instincts more than diagnoses. Her grandmother used to say, "If something feels wrong, it is." Sophia glanced around the room again. The air smelled faintly sweet, but underneath it was something else. Damp, sour. "Do you spend most of your time in here?" she asked. He nodded. "It's the only place I can rest. I try working in the office, but I always end up back here." "May I open the window?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then nodded. Sophia pulled the heavy curtains aside. Sunlight spilled in, cutting through the gloom like a blade. She opened the window, and fresh air rushed inside, pushing back the stale heaviness. "That feels better," he admitted, surprised. Sophia said nothing. She finished cleaning quickly, but as she moved toward the massive walk-in closet, her steps slowed. The smell was stronger there. She crouched near the corner where the wall met the closet paneling. Hidden behind shadows and expensive woodwork was a dark, damp patch spreading quietly, almost alive. Her stomach tightened. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She knew that smell. Over the next few days, Sophia watched carefully. When Nathan worked in his office or walked briefly in the garden, his color improved. His cough softened. His eyes looked clearer. But every time he returned to the master's suite, the sickness came back, faster, stronger. The room was doing this to him. The realization followed her home that night. In their small apartment, her younger sister Laya stood at the stove, flipping quesadillas. "You look like you saw a ghost," Laya said. Sophia told her everything: the illness, the room, the damp patch. Laya's face drained of color. "Sophia, mold like that can kill someone, slowly." Sophia's hands trembled. "I'm just the cleaning lady. What if he doesn't believe me?" "Then you still do the right thing," Laya said firmly. "You can't stay silent knowing this." That night, Sophia barely slept. The next morning, she arrived early. Nathan was in his office, sitting upright, looking better than she had ever seen him. "Mr. Carter," she said, heart pounding, "may I speak with you?" He looked up, surprised. "Of course." She took a breath and chose to speak. Nathan gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "Sit," he said, studying her face as if noticing her properly for the first time. "You look nervous." Sophia sat, folding her hands tightly in her lap. For a moment, words refused to come. Power had weight, and Nathan Carter carried it without trying. One wrong sentence could end her job. One wrong tone could make her sound foolish. Still, the image of that dark, damp patch burned in her mind. "There's something wrong with the master's suite," she said finally, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Not with you, with the room." Nathan blinked. "The room?" "Yes, sir. I've noticed a smell. Dampness. Hidden moisture behind the walk-in closet. And every time you stay in that room for long, your symptoms get worse." He leaned back slightly, skepticism flickering across his expression. "You think my bedroom is making me sick?" "I don't think," Sophia replied carefully. "I've seen it before, in older buildings. Hidden mold grows where air doesn't circulate. It poisons slowly. You don't notice until your body starts breaking down." Silence settled between them. Nathan studied her, searching for something. Fear, exaggeration, ulterior motive? Instead, he found only concern. "If that were true," he said slowly, "why hasn't anyone else noticed?" "Because no one looks," Sophia answered softly. "Staff clean what they're told to clean. Doctors look at reports. No one stays long enough in that room to feel what you feel." Nathan stood. "Show me." They walked upstairs together. The master suite looked the same as always, luxurious, pristine, harmless at first glance. Sophia led him to the closet and crouched, pointing to the corner. "There." Nathan leaned closer. At first he saw nothing, then he smelled it. His face tightened. He stepped back instinctively, covering his mouth. "That's foul," he muttered. "How did I miss this?" "Because it hides. That's what makes it dangerous." Nathan straightened slowly. The weight of realization settled on him like gravity. "I've been sleeping beside this," he whispered. "Yes," Sophia said, "for months." Within hours, specialists were called. The suite was sealed off. Nathan was moved to a guest room overlooking the garden. That night, for the first time in years, he slept without waking in pain. The change wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. By morning, the crushing headache was gone. Sophia arrived early, unsure of what she'd walk into. She found Nathan standing by the window in the guest room, sunlight warming his face. "I didn't cough once last night," he said quietly when he saw her. Relief washed over her so strongly she had to grip the doorframe. Over the next days, contractors tore into the walls. Black mold bloomed behind the panels like a hidden wound. The doctors confirmed it. Long-term exposure had been slowly poisoning him. Nathan's recovery was gradual but real. Color returned to his skin. His steps grew steadier. The house itself felt lighter, as if it could finally breathe. One afternoon, Nathan stopped Sophia in the hallway. "You didn't have to tell me," he said. "It would have been safer not to." Sophia met his eyes. "I couldn't stay quiet." He nodded, something like respect settling between them. That was the moment their lives truly crossed, not as employer and employee, but as two people bound by a single choice. And neither of them yet understood how far that choice would take them. The estate adjusted to Nathan's recovery in small, almost cautious ways. Windows that had remained sealed for years were opened one by one. Curtains were drawn back. Sunlight began to touch corners of the house that had lived too long in shadow. Staff whispered less. Laughter returned in fragments, as if the house itself was relearning how to live. Sophia noticed everything. She noticed how Nathan no longer paused to catch his breath halfway down the hallway, how his cough softened into something rare, almost forgettable, how his eyes, once dulled by constant pain, now followed movement with interest. But most of all, she noticed how he started noticing her. Before, she had been a presence, quiet footsteps, a soft greeting, a task completed. Now he looked up when she entered a room, asked how her day was going, thanked her, not absent-mindedly, but directly. One morning, as she cleaned the guest room where he now stayed, Nathan watched her work. "You trusted your instinct over every professional opinion I'd been given," he said. "That takes courage." Sophia shrugged lightly. "It takes fear, too." He smiled at that. "Fear usually makes people quiet." "Sometimes it does the opposite," she replied. That afternoon, the mold inspectors delivered their final report. The master suite would remain closed for weeks. Repairs would be extensive. Nathan listened carefully, but his attention drifted more than once, toward the open window, the garden beyond, the sense of air moving freely through his lungs. Later, he found Sophia organizing supplies in the service hallway. "I want to make sure you know something," he said. "What you did wasn't small." Sophia paused, unsure how to respond. Praise had never been part of her working life. She had learned to expect silence instead. "I only did what was right," she said. Nathan nodded. "That's exactly why it matters." That night, alone in his room, Nathan reflected on the months he had lost, trapped in a space slowly harming him, trusting systems that never looked closely enough. And then there was Sophia, who had looked when no one else had. For Sophia, sleep came easier than it had in weeks, yet beneath the relief lived a quiet unease. Speaking up had changed something. The line between safety and uncertainty had shifted. She didn't know yet that this was only the beginning, because the room that had nearly killed Nathan Carter was gone, but the consequences of discovering it were just starting to take shape. And soon, Sophia would have to decide whether courage was something you used once or something you lived with. The master suite remained sealed behind warning tape and temporary barriers, like a crime scene no one wanted to talk about. Workers moved in and out in protective gear, their masks and gloves a silent reminder of how close Nathan had come to something irreversible. Sophia avoided the corridor whenever she could, not because she was afraid, but because it made everything real. One afternoon, as she wiped down the windows in the library, Nathan appeared at the doorway. He no longer leaned against walls for support. He stood straight now, hands relaxed at his sides. "I walked the entire garden today, didn't have to stop once." Sophia smiled before she could stop herself. "That's good, sir." He hesitated. "You can call me Nathan." The request landed gently but carried weight. Names change things. All right, she said quietly. Nathan. Something unspoken passed between them, acknowledgement perhaps, or simply shared relief. Later that day, Sophia overheard two staff members whispering near the kitchen. Did you hear? They say the mold nearly killed him. Lucky someone noticed, the other replied. Imagine if it had gone on longer. Sophia kept her head down and pushed her cart past them. She didn't want recognition. She didn't want attention. But a strange truth followed her now. She was no longer invisible. That evening, Nathan sat alone in the guest room, staring at the open window. He thought of how close he'd come to trusting silence over intuition, of how easily his life might have ended without drama or warning, and of the woman who had chosen to speak. Sophia, meanwhile, lay awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling. She felt pride, yes, but also uncertainty. She had stepped beyond her role. The world didn't always reward that. Tomorrow might bring gratitude, or it might bring consequences. At the Carter estate, life was returning to normal, but for Sophia Ramirez and Nathan Carter, normal no longer existed, because some choices don't end when you make them, they begin. Nathan is recovering. The danger is gone, but the space between employer and employee has shifted, and what comes next will test them both. The Carter estate no longer felt like a sick place. That was the first thing Sophia noticed when she arrived on Monday morning. The air moved freely now, drifting through open windows and carrying the faint scent of wet soil from the gardens. Sunlight rested naturally on the walls, instead of being trapped behind heavy curtains. Yet despite the lightness, something in the house felt unsettled. Truth had a way of doing that. Nathan Carter had returned to work. Not slowly, not cautiously, fully. Within days, his schedule filled with meetings, video calls, and long walks through the property. Staff who once tiptoed around his illness now watched him with quiet disbelief. The man who had been confined to a bed was suddenly everywhere. But Sophia saw what others didn't. She saw how he paused sometimes, as if checking his body for pain that no longer arrived. She saw how he inhaled deeply unconsciously, savoring air like someone who had nearly drowned. And she saw the way his eyes followed her, not in ownership, not in expectation, but in awareness. It unsettled her more than the illness ever had. One afternoon, Nathan called a staff meeting in the small conference room off the main hall. Sophia had never been invited to one before. She stood near the door, unsure if she belonged there. Nathan entered, dressed simply without the stiffness of someone trying to prove authority. "I won't take much of your time," he said. "I want to address something important." The room fell silent. For months, I trusted the idea that my health was beyond my control. I trusted systems, experts, silence. He paused, his gaze briefly finding Sophia. That silence nearly cost me my life. A ripple of unease moved through the room. The truth was hidden in plain sight, Nathan continued, and it was noticed by someone who had no obligation to speak, but did. Sophia felt heat rise to her face. "I owe my recovery to Sophia Ramirez." All eyes turned to her. "She saw what no one else did," Nathan said, "and she chose courage over comfort." The room stayed quiet, but the shift was undeniable. Sophia was no longer just staff. After the meeting, the house manager approached her carefully. "If you need anything, let us know." Sophia nodded, unsure what to say. That evening, Nathan found her in the garden, trimming dead leaves from a rose bush. "I didn't mean to put you on the spot," he said. "It's fine," she replied, though her hands shook slightly. "I want to make sure this doesn't stop at gratitude," he said. "You have instincts, awareness. That matters." She looked up. "I'm just doing my job." Nathan shook his head. "No, you did more." In the days that followed, the boundaries began to blur, not intentionally, but inevitably. Nathan started asking for her input on small things, scheduling, supplies, household decisions no one had ever asked her opinion on before. Sophia answered carefully, always aware of the line she walked, but lines had already begun to move. Late one evening, as the house settled into quiet, Nathan stood alone in the hallway outside the sealed master suite. The door was still closed, the damage repaired, but the memory intact. Sophia approached silently. "I won't go back in there," he said without turning. "Not because I'm afraid, but because I finally understand what ignoring warning signs can cost." Sophia nodded. "Some rooms aren't meant to be lived in forever." He turned to her then, truly seeing her. "And some people are meant to open doors," he said. The truth had been revealed. The illness was gone, but the real change had only just begun. Sophia felt the shift before she could explain it. It wasn't just Nathan's words or the way staff now greeted her with hesitant respect. It was subtler than that. Something in the rhythm of her days had changed. Decisions were no longer made around her, they were made with her. One morning, the head housekeeper handed her a clipboard. "Nathan asked if you could review the weekly supply orders," she said, sounding unsure herself. Sophia stared at the paper. No one had ever asked her to review anything. "Me?" she asked. The woman nodded. "His words, not mine." Sophia took the clipboard carefully, as if it might vanish if she moved too fast. Later that day, she found Nathan in the study, sleeves rolled up, standing over architectural plans spread across the desk. "I don't understand half of this," he admitted, tapping the page, "but you notice details. Tell me, does this make sense?" She stepped closer, hesitant at first, then more confident as she examined the layout. "The storage rooms are too enclosed, no airflow. That's how problems start." Nathan looked at her, something like amazement crossing his face. "You think about space differently." "I've had to," I replied. "When you don't have much, you learn to pay attention." That answer stayed with him. As days passed, Sophia found herself staying later, not because she was asked to, but because Nathan genuinely listened when she spoke. He didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss, he asked questions. And that scared her more than being ignored ever had. One evening, she overheard a quiet argument near the service entrance. "Careful," a senior staff member muttered to another. "People don't like it when lines get crossed." Sophia walked past without reacting, but the words followed her home. That night, she sat with Laya at their small kitchen table. "He's trusting me with things," Sophia said. "Important things." Laya raised an eyebrow. And I don't know what that means," Sophia admitted. "I don't want favors. I don't want people thinking I earned something I didn't." Laya studied her sister. "Did you save his life?" Sophia hesitated. "Yes." "Then you already earned it." Back at the estate, Nathan wrestled with a different kind of unease. He had rebuilt companies, navigated hostile boardrooms, survived ruthless markets. But this felt unfamiliar. Gratitude had turned into respect, respect into curiosity, and curiosity into something dangerously personal. One afternoon, he found Sophia in the library, reorganizing shelves. "You don't have to do that," he said. "We can hire someone." She smiled faintly. "I like fixing things people forget about." Nathan watched her work in silence. Then, almost without planning to, "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" he asked. "Not here, outside the estate." Sophia froze. The question wasn't inappropriate in tone, but it was heavy with implication. She looked at him, seeing not the billionaire, not the employer, but a man who had almost died alone in a beautiful room. "I need to think," she said honestly. He nodded immediately. "Of course, no pressure." That night, Sophia lay awake, staring into darkness. Speaking up had saved his life, but staying quiet now might protect her own. The truth was out, the danger was gone, but the line between gratitude and something deeper was becoming harder to see. And soon one of them would have to decide whether crossing it was worth the cost. The next morning, Sophia arrived earlier than usual. The estate was quiet, sunlight spilling across the marble floors, casting long shadows that stretched toward the walls like reminders of what had been lost and what had been gained. Nathan was already in the office, reviewing financial reports, but he looked up when he saw her. For a moment, he simply studied her, as if trying to read something beyond the surface. "You're early," he said softly. "I like to get things done before the chaos begins," Sophia replied, adjusting her apron. Nathan nodded, almost approvingly. Then he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking about what you said, about noticing things no one else does, about paying attention." Sophia's hands froze on the desk. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going. "I want to involve you more, not just with cleaning, not just with minor tasks. I want your input on household operations, on the estate itself. I want your perspective." The weight of his words hit her in waves. This wasn't just acknowledgement, it was trust, responsibility, a shift in the power dynamic that neither of them had anticipated. I don't know if I'm qualified," Sophia said quietly. Nathan shook his head. "It doesn't matter. You notice what others overlook. That's rare. That's valuable. And I want to make sure you're a part of this, not just invisible like before." Sophia swallowed. She wanted to argue, to step back, to remind herself that she was just the cleaning lady. But something in his gaze, the seriousness, the sincerity, made her pause. "All right," she said finally. "I'll try." A small smile crossed Nathan's face. "Good, that's all I'm asking." Over the next few weeks, Sophia's role evolved. She began reviewing supply orders, advising on staffing schedules, and even offering small suggestions on renovation plans. Nathan listened intently, weighing her opinions, and for the first time, she realized she was being heard, not just tolerated. The more she contributed, the more their interactions changed. Casual greetings turned into conversations, conversations into debates, and debates into something unspoken, something charged. One late afternoon, Sophia was walking through the garden when Nathan appeared, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her, their fingers brushing briefly. "You've made a difference," he said simply. "Not just here, in the estate, in my life." Sophia's heart quickened. She wanted to respond, to downplay it, to remind herself of the line between employee and employee, but the words caught in her throat. Nathan leaned slightly closer. "I know I haven't said it enough, but thank you for everything." Sophia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I only did what I thought was right." He smiled softly, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. But the unspoken tension remained. Respect, gratitude, and perhaps something more were intertwining, creating a delicate balance that neither dared to disturb openly. Later that evening, Sophia confided in Laya over the phone. "Things are changing. He's trusting me with things I never imagined, and I don't know how to feel about it." Laya's voice was firm. "You saved his life. You deserve recognition. Don't let fear of crossing lines stop you from accepting that." Sophia exhaled slowly, knowing Laya was right. But she also knew that the next step, what came after trust, after gratitude, would be far more complicated. Nathan is involving Sophia in the estate's operations. Their bond is growing, but personal feelings are starting to mix with professional trust, and both of them will soon face a choice: maintain boundaries or explore something more. The next week, the estate hummed with quiet productivity. Windows remained open, the sunlight spilling into every corner of the house. Nathan moved with newfound energy, walking through rooms he once avoided, inspecting repairs, and speaking with staff as if he were present for the first time in years. Sophia noticed subtle changes in him, less tension in his shoulders, a lighter gait, a faint brightness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. But she also noticed the moments when he lingered, watching her, not the room, not the staff, not the tasks, but her. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting golden light across the garden, Nathan found Sophia arranging flower pots along the terrace. He leaned casually against the railing, hands in pockets, and spoke softly. "You know," he said, "I've been thinking about the day you discovered the mold, how you didn't hesitate to speak up, even when it was safer to remain quiet." Sophia paused, hands frozen in midair. "It wasn't bravery," she said lightly. "It was fear. I couldn't ignore it." Nathan smiled faintly, but there was an intensity in his gaze. "Whatever it was, it changed everything, not just for me, for the house, for everyone here, and for you, I think, too." Her throat tightened. There was truth in his words that unsettled her. The boundary between them had shifted imperceptibly. Gratitude had grown into trust, trust into familiarity, and familiarity now carried a quiet tension neither of them had addressed. I need to leave soon," Sophia said finally, breaking the silence. "The courses I joined, they take time and—" Nathan held up a hand. "I understand, but I also want you to know, I want your input here, your presence. It matters more than you realize." She nodded, unable to form words, feeling the weight of responsibility and something more that was no longer just professional. That night, Sophia lay awake in her small apartment. The city hummed faintly outside, lights flickering in the distance. She thought of Nathan, of the estate, of the trust he had placed in her, and of the question she had yet to face. How much of her life could she allow to be intertwined with someone whose world was so different, whose power was so immense? Across town, Nathan stood by his own window, looking at the darkening city. He thought of Sophia, the way she had acted without hesitation, the way she had cared without expectation. He realized he no longer saw her as just an employee. She had become indispensable not only in the running of his estate, but in a way he could not yet define. And with that thought came a quiet, undeniable truth. Their connection was growing into something deeper, something neither of them could ignore forever. The mold had been removed, the illness had ended, but the real challenge, the challenge of the heart, was only beginning. Sophia is now deeply involved in the estate's management. Nathan's feelings are changing. Both are aware of a growing personal connection, but crossing professional boundaries could be risky. The mornings at the Carter estate had taken on a rhythm Sophia was learning to navigate. Sunlight spilled through open windows, garden paths smelled of wet soil and blooming roses. The house no longer felt oppressive, it felt alive, almost aware. And in that awareness, there was Nathan. He no longer remained secluded in his master suite. He walked through hallways, checking on staff, reviewing plans, sometimes asking Sophia for her opinion. The change was subtle, but for someone who had spent months being invisible, it was seismic. One Tuesday afternoon, Sophia found herself walking beside Nathan through the East Wing gardens. He carried a folder of architectural sketches. She held her tablet with inventory notes. "I've been thinking about how we manage the guest rooms. There's a bottleneck in service delivery. Items often arrive late because staff follow strict routines without flexibility." Sophia glanced down at her notes. "You could adjust scheduling, create a staggered rotation. That way the same staff doesn't get overworked." He turned to look at her, truly looking, and smiled faintly. Exactly. You see the invisible problems. Her pulse quickened. He wasn't complimenting her for kindness or bravery. He was acknowledging her mind. And that acknowledgement carried weight, gravity, and something dangerously personal. For Sophia, the boundary between professional and personal was now delicate, like a thin pane of glass stretching between them. She tried to focus on her tasks, on the estate, on Laya waiting for her at home, but Nathan's presence lingered in the edges of her thoughts. Later that week, Nathan invited her to review the estate's inventory with him in his office. As she entered, she noticed the soft evening light spilling across the desk, dust particles floating like tiny stars. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She did, keeping her hands folded. Nathan began explaining a new maintenance plan, but his gaze often drifted to her hands, her expressions, the way she listened intently. She noticed, and she tried not to. After some silence, he leaned back. "You know, I never expected someone like you to notice the things that really matter. Most people look, but they don't see." Sophia swallowed, aware of the warmth rising in her chest. "I guess I've always had to pay attention," she said quietly. "It's instinct." A beat of silence passed, heavier than either had intended. Nathan's eyes lingered, almost pleading, almost curious. "You saved me once," he said softly, "and I don't know how to repay you, not just for that, but for everything you do every day." Sophia's heartbeat quickened. The words were simple, but they carried weight, gratitude, admiration, and something deeper she couldn't name. "I don't need repayment," she said, keeping her voice level. She hesitated, unsure how to continue. "I just do what's right." Nathan's gaze softened, but there was intensity there now, a focus that unsettled her. The line they had maintained, the line between employer and employee, was shifting in ways neither wanted to acknowledge yet. That evening, Sophia walked home through the quiet streets of Greenwood Hills. Her mind replayed every interaction of the day, every glance, every word, and slowly the truth settled uncomfortably. She was no longer just a staff member. She was a part of Nathan's world in a way that had nothing to do with work, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. Across town, Nathan stared out the window of his study, watching the city lights flicker. He thought of Sophia, her courage, her intelligence, her presence. Every time he saw her, he felt a pull, a weight he hadn't experienced in years. Gratitude had grown into something deeper he wasn't yet ready to name aloud. But he knew this: the connection between them was no longer professional, and soon it would demand recognition. The next day, Nathan invited Sophia to join him for a walk through the private gardens after work. "I thought maybe you'd like to see the new landscaping plans," he said, almost shyly. "It's easier to discuss while walking." Sophia hesitated. Walking with the employer alone could be dangerous territory. Yet something in his tone, the quiet way he asked, made her nod. As they walked, sunlight glinting off dew-kissed leaves, a subtle tension threaded between them. Conversations flowed naturally at first, about flower beds, irrigation systems, and estate maintenance, but soon their words drifted, soft, personal. "You've changed this place," Sophia said finally. "It's lighter." Nathan glanced at her. "And you've changed me." She froze. The weight of his words, delivered quietly, sincerely, carried more power than any compliment, more intimacy than any recognition of work. They walked in silence after that, the sound of rustling leaves filling the space between them. Sophia realized with both fear and anticipation that this closeness, this growing personal connection, was something neither of them could ignore forever. And for the first time, she wondered, crossing that invisible line, was it inevitable or was it a choice they still had to make? The question hangs, will they maintain professional boundaries or step into something more? The days that followed felt charged with a subtle electricity. Sophia noticed the smallest things, the way Nathan lingered a fraction longer when she entered a room, the softening of his tone when he spoke to her, the way he seemed to value her opinion above all others. One late afternoon, Nathan asked her to join him in the guest room. He was reviewing renovation plans, but the soft light of the setting sun made the space feel intimate, almost private. "Look at this corner," he said, pointing to the sketches. "We can expand the window here, let in more light, fresh air." Sophia examined the drawing, careful not to let her emotions show. Yes, that would make a big difference. Less stagnant air, more circulation. The staff will appreciate it too. He studied her closely, not the plans. "It's not just the estate you improve," he said softly. "It's everything you touch." Her breath caught. She looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. His words were sincere, but they carried an intimacy she wasn't sure she was ready for. "Thank you," she whispered finally, almost automatically. Nathan didn't reply. Instead, he watched her, quiet, thoughtful. The room felt warmer somehow, not from the sunlight, but from the tension between them, the unspoken acknowledgement of something deeper forming. Later that evening, Sophia left the estate, her mind spinning. Every glance, every word replayed endlessly. Gratitude had shifted into something more complex, and she felt both anticipation and fear. At home, Laya noticed the change immediately. "You're different," Laya said over dinner, eyes sharp. "Happier, lighter." Sophia sighed. "It's complicated. I can't put it into words." Laya smiled knowingly. "Maybe that's because words aren't enough. Just be careful." Back at the estate, Nathan sat alone in the library reviewing plans, but his thoughts weren't on the renovations, they were on Sophia. Her courage, her insight, the way she made him feel seen for the first time in years. He realized he wanted more than professional respect. He wanted her presence, her laughter, her attention. And he knew he had to tread carefully. One wrong move could push her away, undoing everything they had built. The next morning, Nathan found Sophia watering the terrace plants. The sun glinted off the leaves, the air was crisp, and the estate seemed to hold its breath. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning, sir," she replied, instinctively formal. "Call me Nathan," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She hesitated, then nodded. "Nathan." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The air felt heavy, yet exhilarating, charged with possibilities neither wanted to voice. "Would you like to join me for coffee after your shift? Outside the estate, somewhere quiet?" Nathan asked carefully. Sophia froze. Her pulse quickened. She knew the implications, crossing the line between professional and personal, but something in his tone made her heart answer before her mind could object. I'd like that," she said softly. Nathan's smile was brief but genuine, and the moment passed, but it lingered in their hearts long after. As Sophia left that evening, her thoughts were tangled. The estate no longer felt like just a workplace. Nathan no longer felt like just an employer. And for the first time, she wondered whether stepping beyond the invisible line was something she was ready or willing to do. Nathan and Sophia's bond is moving beyond trust and professional respect. A coffee invitation signals the first step into personal territory. Both must now navigate desire, boundaries, and consequences that could change everything. The next afternoon, Sophia arrived at the small, quiet cafe Nathan had chosen. It was tucked away on a tree-lined street in Greenwood Hills, far from the noise of the estate and its staff. The windows were wide, letting in golden light, and the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans and baked pastries filled the air. Nathan was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of steaming coffee. He stood when she approached, smiling warmly. "You made it," he said simply. "I did," Sophia replied, settling into the chair across from him. Her fingers brushed the rim of her cup, seeking comfort in its warmth. For a moment, they both sat in silence, listening to the quiet hum of the cafe. It was a strange, grounding contrast to the vastness of the estate, where every sound carried weight. Nathan spoke first. "I wanted to do this, not for work, not for the estate. I wanted to spend time with you." Sophia's throat tightened. "I'm not sure what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just sit, talk, be here." She nodded slowly, letting herself relax just enough to meet his gaze. There was honesty there, vulnerability even, a side of Nathan Carter she had never seen at the estate, and it drew her in against every instinct that warned her of boundaries. They talked about simple things at first, the cafe, the weather, a book Sophia had been reading. But as the conversation flowed, it deepened. Nathan shared stories of his childhood, the pressures of wealth and responsibility, the loneliness that had accompanied his illness. Sophia shared anecdotes of her life in Los Angeles, caring for Laya, the struggles that had taught her resilience. With every word, every glance, the distance between them shrank. Neither moved physically closer, but the air around the table seemed charged. At one point, Nathan reached for his cup, but his hand lingered a moment too long near hers. Sophia felt a jolt, a spark that was equal parts thrill and fear. She reminded herself that this was still professional territory, but it was impossible to ignore what was happening between them. You've changed my perspective," Nathan said quietly, "not just on the estate, but on everything, on life, on how much courage matters and how little attention people pay to what really matters." Sophia looked down, her heart racing. I just noticed what needed to be done, that's all." "No," he said softly, leaning slightly forward. "It's never just that. What you do, how you see, it matters. To me." A silence fell. The words hung in the air, delicate, heavy, intimate. Sophia could feel the boundary shifting. She could feel it in the warmth of the afternoon sun, in the quiet murmur of the cafe, in the intensity of his gaze. For the first time, she admitted to herself that she wanted this, to explore what was growing between them, even if it was risky. Nathan smiled faintly, reading her hesitation as courage and curiosity. "I don't want to rush anything," he said. "I just wanted this, to see you outside the estate without expectation, without obligation, just us." Sophia nodded, a small, genuine smile forming. "Just us," she echoed. The moment was fragile, beautiful, and fleeting, but it marked the beginning of something neither of them could ignore. As they left the cafe, walking side by side down the quiet street, the world felt different. The estate, the boundaries, the responsibilities, they all still existed. But now, between Sophia and Nathan, there was something new, possibility. And for the first time in months, both of them felt it. Hope that life could be more than routine, more than obligation, that it could be shared. The coffee date has created a new, unspoken connection. Both Sophia and Nathan feel the pull towards something more intimate, but stepping beyond professional boundaries could have consequences. After the coffee date, a subtle change settled over the Carter estate. The sunlight seemed warmer. The corridors, once echoing only with staff movements, now carried laughter and conversation, quiet, deliberate, personal. Sophia noticed it first in the small moments. Nathan's eyes followed her just a fraction longer. His questions were softer, more personal. and yet every interaction still carried the weight of their professional roles. One morning, Sophia arrived to find Nathan in the library, reviewing reports. He looked up, smiling. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning, Nathan," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the lingering memory of their coffee date. He motioned to the chair beside him. "Sit. I want your opinion on the landscaping redesign. We may need to alter the flower beds near the east wing. Ventilation is better there, and the staff can access it easier." Sophia approached carefully, taking her seat. She leaned over the plans, offering suggestions, while trying not to let her heart race. Nathan noticed again. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but the way he watched her, listened to her, and valued her input, it drew her in, pulled her closer than she had ever been to an employer before. Later that week, the first real challenge arose. A wealthy client, invited for a tour of the estate's gardens, made a comment about Sophia's role. "Oh, she's just the assistant, I assume," the client said, smirking. Nathan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "She's invaluable. Her insight and attention to detail are why the estate is functioning better than ever." The client scoffed. "A cleaning lady? Really?" Sophia's face burned, but Nathan didn't waver. He stepped closer to Sophia, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Don't let anyone define your value," he said softly, just for her. "You know your worth." The words sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just gratitude. There was protectiveness, admiration, and something unspoken simmering beneath the surface. That evening, Sophia confided in Laya. "He defended me," she said quietly, stirring her tea. "Not because he had to, but because he wanted to." Laya nodded knowingly. "And that matters. It shows you're more than just an employee to him." Sophia didn't respond immediately. She felt both excitement and fear. Crossing professional boundaries now wasn't just a thought, it was a possibility. And the estate, the house, even Nathan himself, all of it had changed around her. A few days later, Nathan asked Sophia to join him for a late evening walk in the private gardens. The sun had just set, leaving behind a soft twilight that bathed the estate in pale pink and gold. "Do you ever think about what life would have been like if we hadn't met?" Nathan asked, breaking the silence. Sophia paused. "Sometimes, yes, I think about it." Nathan's gaze softened. "I don't want to imagine it. You saved me, not just from the illness, but from a life of isolation, and somehow I don't think I can repay you." Sophia felt a warmth rise to her cheeks. "You've already given me trust, Nathan. That's enough." He reached out briefly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The contact was fleeting, yet electric. "We're walking a line," Sophia said softly, stepping back just enough to maintain control. "We have to be careful." Nathan nodded. "I know, but sometimes the heart doesn't wait for permission." Silence fell between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was charged with unspoken possibilities, a mixture of fear and anticipation. The first real test was clear. The estate, the world outside, and their own cautious hearts were all forces that could either bring them closer or drive them apart, and both of them knew it. Sophia and Nathan are navigating a delicate emotional balance. Their connection deepens, but external judgments and internal fears begin to challenge them. The next chapter will test their trust, boundaries, and feelings like never before. The following week brought a tension that neither Sophia nor Nathan had anticipated. The estate's staff began whispering behind closed doors, their eyes lingering on Sophia longer than necessary. The corridors, once filled with quiet efficiency, now carried subtle glances and murmurs. Sophia felt it immediately. A combination of pride, frustration, and unease settled over her. She had earned Nathan's trust, yet the world around them refused to acknowledge it. One afternoon, while reviewing the garden renovation plans with Nathan, a senior staff member approached. "Sir, there's been talk among the staff," he began cautiously, "about Miss Ramirez overstepping boundaries." Nathan's expression hardened, but his voice remained calm. "Thank you. I'll handle it." Sophia's heart sank. She had expected whispers, but hearing them confirmed made it real. "Don't let them worry you," Nathan said softly, placing a hand briefly over hers. "You have every right to be here." Her pulse quickened. The touch was innocent, professional in intent, but it carried a warmth that unsettled her. Later, in her small apartment, Sophia confided in Laya. "They're judging me, everyone," she said, stirring her tea. "Even when I do the right thing, it feels like I'm being watched." Laya's voice was firm. "Then let Nathan handle it. You've earned his respect. That's what matters." Sophia nodded, but unease lingered. She valued Nathan's trust, but now their growing personal connection added a new layer of vulnerability. The real test came that evening. Nathan asked her to join him for a quiet dinner in the estate, just the two of them. The staff would be away for a charity event, leaving the estate empty, the candlelight soft, the air intimate. "I trust you," Nathan said when he noticed her pause. "I want you to feel safe here." She nodded, swallowing her fear. During dinner, their conversation flowed easily, first about the estate, then about personal dreams, past regrets, and quiet hopes. The distance between them, though unspoken, shrank with every word. After the plates were cleared, Nathan reached for his glass, but his hand brushed against hers. This time, the contact lingered a fraction longer than necessary. Sophia felt a spark she couldn't ignore. "Nathan, she began, but he placed a finger gently over her lips. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too, but we have to be careful for both our sakes." Sophia nodded, her heart racing. The first real test had arrived, not from staff, not from the world, but from the undeniable pull between them. They spent the rest of the evening talking, laughter and quiet glances threading between sentences, and when Sophia left for home, she knew one thing clearly. Whatever they were building, it was no longer just trust or professional respect. It was something far more delicate, far more dangerous, and far more exhilarating. Sophia and Nathan face external judgment from staff and the internal challenge of their growing feelings. Their first intimate, private encounter confirms their connection, but the boundaries they've maintained are now fragile. The estate felt different that morning. Sunlight poured through the windows, the gardens glimmered with dew, and a sense of quiet anticipation hung in the air. Sophia arrived early, her heart both nervous and excited. Today felt important, though she wasn't sure why. Nathan was already in the office, reviewing plans, but he looked up as she entered. His expression softened when he saw her. "Good morning," he said, standing. "You look radiant today." Sophia felt warmth rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, Nathan." He gestured toward the garden. "Walk with me?" They strolled side by side, the morning air crisp and sweet. For a moment, words weren't necessary. The connection between them spoke louder than conversation could. Finally, Nathan stopped near a fountain, the water glinting in the sunlight. He turned to face her fully. "Sophia," he said softly, "everything we've shared, every moment, every glance, it's led to this. I can't ignore it anymore. I don't want to." Sophia's heart raced. She had felt it too, the tension, the attraction, the deep respect that had grown into something more. "I feel the same," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But We have to be careful. For the estate, for us." Nathan smiled gently. "I know, but we've already crossed invisible lines in ways that matter. Maybe it's time we stop worrying about lines and just be honest about what we feel." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, simple yet profound. "You saved me once," Nathan continued, his voice filled with emotion. "Not just from illness, but from a life without connection. I want to be part of your life now, if you'll let me." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief and joy of being seen, truly seen. I'd like that," she whispered. Nathan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's start together." The weeks that followed saw Sophia and Nathan navigating a new rhythm. Their professional lives remained intertwined, but now personal moments, the shared coffee in the kitchen, evening walks through the gardens, quiet laughter over small mistakes wove seamlessly into their days. The estate itself seemed to reflect the change. Light filled rooms that were once dark. The staff noticed a new energy in the air, a harmony that made even mundane tasks feel lighter. Laya visited often, smiling knowingly at her sister's glow. "You look happy," she said one evening. "I am," Sophia replied softly, thinking of Nathan. "I've never felt this seen, this understood." Nathan, for his part, found balance in having Sophia by his side. Her insight, courage, and care reshaped not only the estate, but also his perspective on life. Together, they became partners in every sense, respectful, affectionate, and deeply connected. One quiet morning, as they shared coffee on the terrace overlooking the gardens, Nathan squeezed Sophia's hand gently. "Do you remember the first day you found the mold?" he asked, smiling. Sophia nodded, a small laugh escaping. "Yes, I thought I was going to faint from the smell." "You saved my life that day," Nathan said softly, "and now you've saved me in ways I never imagined. I want to spend every day showing you how much that matters." Sophia squeezed his hand back, feeling the weight of the journey they had shared. "And I'll be here, every day." The sun rose higher, casting golden light over the estate. Their hands remained intertwined, hearts aligned, and the world seemed a little lighter, a little brighter. If you enjoyed Sophia and Nathan's journey from courage and trust to love, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Comment below your thoughts. Would you have had the courage to speak up like Sophia? Stay tuned for our next thrilling tale of mystery and courage set in Europe, this time involving a hidden inheritance, a long-lost secret, and a daring choice that could change everything.